They say there are places where the earth breathes differently, where the trees lean slightly inward, as if listening, where moss clings to the rocks not just from dampness, but from memory. In such places, the veil between what is seen and what is felt thins. You may walk through them and never notice, or you may feel a shiver, like a gaze brushing your skin when no one is near. In those places, you do not speak loudly. You do not laugh carelessly. You do not leave offerings unless you mean them with your entire heart. Because the forest remembers, and the forest watches. And within the forest walks a presence older than time, as light as mist, as swift as wind, and as haunting as a song heard only in dreams. They call her the Deer Woman. She is not a legend told in warning. She is a story told in longing. Her steps are silent, but her presence is not. Where she walks, the air thickens with fragrance, earth after rain, the breath of ferns, the heat of skin under moonlight. She appears not with thunder, but with stillness. The kind of stillness that makes birds fall silent and makes your breath catch before you know why. No one sees her face clearly, and yet all remember her. Some say she is beautiful beyond words, eyes like dusk, skin the color of raw honey, hair black as river stones. Others say she shifts, changes, flickers between woman and deer and shadow. But all agree on one thing: her legs, strong, lean, impossibly graceful, and ending just below the knees in the dark, delicate legs of a deer. Sometimes she dances. It is not a dance meant to be seen, and yet it is never truly hidden. Her body moves with a rhythm that is not human. Hips swaying like reeds, arms reaching like branches, feet barely grazing the soil. Her dance stirs more than the wind. It stirs something ancient in those who witness it, something tender, something hungry, something they thought they had long forgotten. The Deer Woman does not speak, not with words. She communicates through closeness, through scent, through gaze, through the silence between footsteps. But her message is always the same: come closer, come deeper, come willingly. They say she appears to men most often, men lost in their thoughts, men broken by love, men swollen with desire or grief or rage. She calls to the places in them that ache. She does not fix what is broken, but she reveals it tenderly, like peeling back skin from a wound. And then she touches it softly. Sometimes that touch is ecstasy. Sometimes it is intolerable. But always it is unforgettable. Others say she comes to women too, women who have been silenced, women who burn quietly, women who have forgotten what their own pulse feels like. To them, she is not seduction, but remembrance, a call to return, a call to rise, a whisper to reclaim their bodies, their hunger, their wildness. No one who meets the Deer Woman remains unchanged. Some are never seen again. Some wander back days later, eyes glassy, mouth full of secrets they can no longer hold. Some are left trembling beside the roots of old trees, covered in dew though the forest is dry. They speak in fragments, in poetry, in silence. Is she a spirit, a goddess, a warning, a promise? She is older than questions. She is desire shaped into hooves. She is love without mercy. She is nature's intimate justice. And yet her myth is not born of vengeance. It is born of longing. It is born of the endless dance between want and warning. In the old stories, they say she came first when the world was soft, when the animals still spoke, and the rivers still remembered names. She was born from moonlight spilled on moss, or perhaps from a woman who loved a stag so deeply that she followed him into the other world and never returned. Perhaps she is both. Perhaps she is something else entirely. The ancestors told their children not to follow the sound of hooves at night, not to chase laughter into the trees, not to lie alone in fields where the fog rolls low. But they also sang to her. They left flowers. They whispered her name as if in prayer. Because the deer woman is not only fear, she is also fascination. She is what waits in the heart's deep shadow, not to devour, but to awaken. Her presence is liminal, a twilight figure, neither predator nor prey, neither human nor animal, neither curse nor blessing. She exists in the space between, the between of dusk and night, of touch and thought, of restraint and surrender. She is not cruel, but she is not kind in the way humans understand kindness. She is simply true, and the truth is not always soft. She teaches through sensation, through the way breath quickens when you feel watched, through the ache in your chest when you want what you shouldn't, through the trembling that comes not from cold, but from something far deeper. She teaches that the body remembers, even when the mind has forgotten. The deer woman does not punish, she reveals. What you do with that revelation is your own. Some have said she came to them after betrayal, after heartbreak, after rage made their hearts hard. They say she stood before them with eyes full of moonlight and simply waited. And in that stillness they broke, not apart, but open. Cracks formed, and through them light and sorrow and beauty spilled. Others say they brought fire into their blood, taught them to hunger again, to move their own hips in rhythm with the earth, to touch themselves not with shame, but with reverence, to breathe in the night as if it were perfume, to claim their longing as sacred. Still others say they met her in dreams, not as a figure, but as a feeling, of grass beneath bare feet, of eyes watching from the dark, of something pulsing beneath their skin that had no name. And when they woke, they were changed, their senses sharper, their desires clearer, their fears quieter. The dear woman does not stay. She is not possession. She is encounter. And if you call to her, she may come, but never in the way you expect, and never without asking something in return. Her gift is this: she will show you the part of yourself you've buried, and she will ask you to dance with it. That is the myth. It is not written in books. It is told in breath, in glances, in the hush of the forest when everything else is sleeping. And now you hear it again. Perhaps the ground beneath your feet has softened.
Perhaps the air has stilled. Perhaps the night is warmer than it should be. Perhaps your heart is heavier than you admit. If so, she may be near. If so, this story may no longer just be a story. It may be a beginning.
She moves like memory, partial, fading, returning when least expected. The dear woman is not a creature of definition. She slips between boundaries, unfixed, like breath against skin. She is neither entirely of the earth, nor entirely of spirit. Her body holds the grace of something untamed, yet her gaze carries the weight of countless lives watched, touched, and undone. She is woman, yes. The curve of her hips sways with the rhythm of an older dance. Her breasts rise and fall as if sculpted from breath itself, alive and warm. Her face shifts, sometimes delicate, sometimes sharp, always radiant in a way that is not beauty but gravity. People do not look at her, they are pulled into her. And yet, beneath the skirt that never tangles, beneath the smooth thighs shaped like river stones worn soft by time, her calves bear the unmistakable bend and lean strength of a deer, cloven, precise, primal. The flesh above them speaks of invitation. The limbs below them speak of escape. To some she is temptation, to others revelation. To all she is something that should not be touched, yet must be followed. The forest bends around her. Light clings to her skin like a lover reluctant to leave. Her scent is never the same. Sometimes the clean sharpness of winter air, sometimes the heat of crushed berries, sometimes the faintest trace of musk and sweat, and something older, like the first moment of want. Her steps make no sound, and yet those who feel her pass will say they heard drums, slow, echoing, steady as a heartbeat under flesh. No one ever remembers how long they looked at her, only that they stopped looking at anything else. And in the stillness between her appearances, there are always those who wait. He was not a man who believed in spirits, not in the way children do, not in the way the old whisper when they think no one is listening. He believed in silence, in the dullness that filled the spaces where connection should have lived. He carried it like fog in his chest, like a dull ache behind the eyes. It was not pain, but absence. He came to the forest not for healing, but because there was nowhere else to go. The town behind him had closed its doors, the people their mouths, and his own memories their warmth. There had been a woman once, and laughter, and something that felt like home, but that too had passed. So he walked. He was not young, not old. His body had known work, his hands had held beauty and loss in equal measure. His eyes were tired, but not empty. He did not seek to forget, only to feel something again. Anything. The woods did not welcome him, but they did not turn him away. Branches moved aside with indifferent grace. Leaves fell in spirals, landing on his shoulders like breath. The wind said nothing, yet wrapped around him with a presence that made him pause, though he could not say why. It was in that moment, when he neither searched nor fled, that she came. At first, there was only stillness. Not absence, but the thick, lush kind of stillness that precedes revelation. The air tasted different. He noticed the way his skin tingled, the hairs on his arms rising as if touched. Something had shifted, though he could not say what. He turned and saw her. She stood at a distance not far, yet not near, close enough that her presence entered him, far enough that he could not reach. Her body was dappled with the light that slipped through the trees, patterned like leaves on water. Her hair fell wild across her shoulders, and her eyes were not of this world.
They did not ask. They did not plead. They knew. They knew his name without language, his pain without explanation. They looked into him without judgment, as if seeing everything he had hidden and choosing still to stand there. He did not move, neither did she. Time unraveled between them. It did not pass, it deepened. Seconds became something denser. His chest tightened not with fear, but with recognition. Something in him had waited for this moment before it ever happened. She tilted her head, not like a woman, but like an animal deciding whether to flee or stay. The motion revealed the line of her neck, soft and unguarded. His eyes followed it without meaning to. He felt the warmth rise behind his ribs, uninvited and ancient. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She did not need words. Her presence was enough. It clung to his skin, slid into his breath. His body remembered touch. His mouth remembered names it had never spoken. His pulse matched the rhythm of her invisible dance. He could see her legs now. Not woman's legs, deer's, smooth, sinewed, exquisite. Not wrong, not monstrous. They belonged to her completely. There was no shame in her form, no apology. She was sacred in her duality. She was duality. Something inside him reached toward her, not physically, but with ache, with wonder, with the desperate desire to be seen by something pure and wild and utterly beyond taming. She did not step closer. She did not need to. He felt her like heat in the bones, like a storm in slow motion just beyond the horizon. His throat tightened. He did not know if he wanted to run or fall to his knees. He did neither. He simply stood, bare in a way that had nothing to do with skin. Then, without sound, she turned. Her departure was not retreat, it was invitation, a promise written in absence. She walked away, slow and certain. Her hooves kissed the earth like a lover in goodbye. Her back swayed with each step, not seductively, but inevitably. She did not look back. He did. He stood long after she vanished into the green, breathless, changed. He did not know her name, but she knew his. He did not speak, but she had heard everything. From that day he wandered the forest, not with purpose, but with openness,
listening, feeling, hoping for silence to fall that same heavy way, for air to still, for the earth to ache again beneath his feet with the echo of her steps. And he knew this: she had not come by accident, nor had she come to all. She had chosen him not because he was worthy, but because he was raw. And in her gaze he was not broken, he was simply real.
The forest breathed with the slow pulse of the earth, deep and ancient, a rhythm older than memory. Night spread its velvet cloak, stitched with scattered stars, and the moon hung low, swollen with light. It was a time of transformation, when shadows grew long and boundaries thinned between what was real and what whispered just beyond perception. Within this breathing wildness the man moved, his heart a tangled knot of ache and wonder. The dear woman had become a presence he could no longer escape. She was a constant ache behind his eyes, the fever beneath his skin. Yet with her came a storm he was too fearful to name. He felt drawn to her like the tide to the shore, an inevitable pull that filled him with longing and dread in equal measure. Each encounter with her left him both desperate and trembling, a man caught between worlds, struggling to hold on to what was known while reaching for what could never be fully grasped. He was torn between the sharp edges of his fear and the intoxicating lure of fascination, between the hollow ache of loneliness and the wild promise burning in her gaze, between the instinct that screamed to run and the stubborn heart that refused to let go. At times he saw her as a flame, dangerous, consuming, impossible to touch without being burned. At others she was a breath of fresh air, cool and gentle, a reminder that life could still hold beauty beyond pain. But she was never just one thing. She was both invitation and warning, desire and consequence. The dear woman watched him with eyes that knew too much, eyes that held the forest's secret stories and his own unspoken truths. She did not speak, but her presence spoke volumes. Her silence was a language all its own, threaded with the thrill of near touch and the sharp sting of withheld promise. In the dark woods, each meeting was a delicate dance of tension. The air between them thickened, charged with electricity. His gaze lingered on the curve of her neck, the soft sway of her body, the way the moonlight kissed her skin. His hands itched to reach out, to close the distance, but something held him back, something primal and ancient. She moved like shadow and flame, never quite close enough, yet never truly gone. Sometimes her fingers brushed his arm, a fleeting whisper of warmth that sent shivers racing down his spine. Other times her breath mingled with his in the cold night air, a silent promise hanging between them. The forest around them mirrored the turmoil inside his chest. On nights when the moon was full and round, her presence was strongest, radiant, impossible to resist. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to break. The wind would howl through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and rain, and his heart would pound with both hope and fear. When storms rolled in, the sky dark and swollen with rain, the tension between them deepened. Thunder echoed like a warning, and lightning flashed like fractured desire. He would stand frozen, caught between fleeing and surrendering, the storm outside a mirror to the tempest inside. On quieter nights, when the moon slipped behind clouds and the forest was wrapped in shadows, the ache in his soul was almost unbearable. The silence pressed down like a weight, and he could almost hear the echo of her footsteps in the distance, soft, steady, haunting. He wrestled with his own contradictions, the longing for closeness and the fear of what that closeness might mean, the desperate need to understand her and the terror of losing himself if he tried. His mind was a battlefield where instinct and control clashed, where love tangled with lust in a dangerous embrace. Each night, the lines between his dreams and waking life blurred. Sometimes he would wake gasping, as if trying to catch a fleeting breath or reach for a shadow just beyond his fingers. The memory of her touch, light, elusive, haunted him. He could feel it like a whisper along his skin, a warmth that both soothed and unsettled. The pull of her was like the moon's own gravity, tugging at his soul with relentless insistence. And yet, every time he stepped closer, the boundary held firm, a delicate but unyielding barrier between two worlds. The dear woman was the wild he could not tame, the mystery he could not solve. She was freedom and captivity all at once, a reflection of his own fractured soul. And with every stolen glance, every breath caught in the hush between them, the line between pain and pleasure blurred. Her warnings were unspoken but clear. In the curve of her smile, in the tilt of her head, in the way she held herself, there was a knowledge that to cross certain lines was to invite loss, to risk everything. She was both the desire and the danger, the promise and the price. He felt the tension coil tighter with every encounter. The air grew thick with anticipation, every moment heavy with what might be and what might never be. The forest seemed to lean closer, holding its breath alongside him. Yet still he reached toward her, not with reckless abandon, but with a cautious hunger that made every moment stretch and tremble. The air between them was electric, alive with the possibility of connection and the shadow of consequences. The dear woman's presence was both balm and torment, comforting in its familiarity, devastating in its distance. She was a riddle wrapped in moonlight and shadow, a paradox she could neither resist nor unravel. One night, as the moon swelled full and bright above them, he felt the pull stronger than ever. The wind stirred the leaves, and the forest seemed to hold its breath alongside him. She appeared at the edge of the clearing, her form illuminated like a dream carved from silver light. He stepped forward, heart pounding, breath catching, the space between them charged with the electric hum of desire and fear. His hand rose, trembling, toward her, toward the impossible. For a moment, their eyes locked, and everything else fell away. Time slowed to a pulse. to a breath, to the fragile beat of a heart on the edge of surrender. But then, as if carried on a whisper, she stepped back, just enough to keep the distance, just enough to remind him of the lines that could not be crossed. And in that retreat there was both heartbreak and a promise that this dance between them was far from over, that the pull of the wild, of desire, of danger would call him again and again. So he stood, caught between two worlds, the yearning for touch and the wisdom to wait, the hunger for closeness and the fear of what it might cost. And beneath the watchful moon, the forest whispered around them, the eternal song of tension, desire, and the fragile beauty of the space between.
The night stretched wide, vast and still, a canvas of velvet darkness pierced by scattered stars. The air held a hush, as if the world itself had paused, breath caught in anticipation. Between the ancient trees, the forest whispered secrets older than time, secrets carried on the soft rhythm of a slow, steady heartbeat. In this sacred space, the man and the dear woman stood, two beings suspended between earth and dream, between shadow and light. The tension that had bound them tight for so long now wove itself into something else, a fragile, trembling thread of surrender. Their eyes met, no words, no promises, only the quiet understanding of something inevitable. The pull between them softened, becoming a tide that rose gently, enveloping every inch of skin and soul. Time dissolved. The steady rhythm of night, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a lone owl, all faded into the background, replaced by the warmth blooming between them. It was a warmth that neither had expected, a quiet flame that licked at the edges of fear and longing. He felt it first as a breath, a slow, deep inhalation that filled his chest with something more than air. It was the essence of her presence, of the wildness that clung to her like a second skin. Her skin was a delicate hush, the softest brush of wind on bare earth, the faintest pulse beneath fingertips that seemed to glow with a light all their own. He traced the curve of her arm, the swell of her shoulder, and in those small, sacred touches found the map to a world he had only glimpsed in dreams. The space between them was no longer empty, but alive. Alive with the silent poetry of breath, mingling with breath, with the gentle rise and fall of hearts beating in unison. It was a dance without movement, a stillness that pulsed with an electric current. She moved closer, a subtle shift that sent a shiver weaving through him. Their shadows intertwined, blurring the lines of where one ended and the other began. The forest seemed to lean in, the branches bowing in reverence to this delicate moment. There was no rush, no frantic grasping or desperate claim. Instead, it was the slow unraveling of walls built from years of fear and solitude. Each heartbeat a thread, each breath a step closer to something raw and real. His senses sharpened, the faint scent of pine and earth mingling with the softness of her skin, the warmth radiating between them like a fire nurtured in silence. The cool night air was a contrast to the heat pooling deep inside, a reminder that they existed between worlds, between wild and human, between desire and the sacred. The rhythm of their union was subtle, a pulse beneath the surface rather than a shout, like the forest itself, ancient, enduring, mysterious. Their bodies spoke in a language older than words, a conversation held in glances, in the trembling of fingertips, in the shared space of breath and heartbeat. In that suspended moment, the man felt the boundaries of himself dissolve. The wildness of the dear woman seeped into his veins, a liquid fire igniting something fierce and tender all at once. He was both lost and found, unmade and remade by the fragile beauty of their connection. It was a dreamlike sensation, half remembered, half imagined, as if the night had folded over itself to create a world where time did not exist. It was a place of pure feeling, where the weight of loneliness lifted, replaced by the quiet strength of being seen, being held, being understood. There was an unsettling edge beneath the tenderness, an echo of danger that hummed beneath the surface. It was the knowledge that this surrender was fragile, a delicate balance between what was given and what might be taken away. The dear woman was both muse and mystery, a promise and a warning, wrapped in one.
His hands traced the curve of her spine, the line of her neck, and in those small, reverent touches, he found an unexpected tenderness. The sharp edges of longing softened, replaced by a warm ache that stretched beyond the skin to touch the soul. Her breath came in soft, uneven rhythms, a quiet song that filled the space between them. The forest held its breath with them, the night deepening into a cocoon of shadow and light, of warmth and coolness, of silence and sound. In that moment, words dissolved. There was no need for language, only the language of sensation, of breath, of shared heartbeats. Every touch was a verse, every glance a stanza in a poem written in the dark. The man felt his body respond, not with urgency, but with a slow, unfolding reverence. It was as if time had slowed, the world pared down to the exquisite tension of skin against skin, of breath mingling with breath, of souls reaching through the veil that separated them. The dear woman's presence was a flame that burned without consuming, a light that illuminated the deepest parts of him without fear. She was wild and sacred, danger and sanctuary, all at once. Their union was not a conquest, but a communion, a meeting of two forces that balanced and completed each other. The night wrapped around them like a soft cloak,
the stars winking silently above as witnesses to this fleeting, fragile moment. He felt her heartbeat against his own, steady and sure, a drumbeat that echoed in the hollow chambers of his chest. The scent of the forest, the sound of the wind, the taste of cool night air, all fused into a symphony of sensation that carried him beyond the limits of the known. This was more than desire. It was a surrender to something vast and timeless, a joining not just of bodies but of spirits, a moment when the wildness within him was tamed not by control, but by acceptance. As dawn began to edge the horizon with pale light, the world shifted again. The magic of the night folded away, leaving only the soft imprint of memory, warmth lingering on skin, the echo of breath, the quiet promise held in the spaces between. And though the moment passed, it remained, a secret etched deep in the heart, a story whispered by the wind, a truth carried in the silent language of the forest. The man's breath slowed, mingling with the gentle sigh of leaves rustling in the morning breeze. The feeling of her nearness lingered like the scent of rain on dry earth, intangible, yet undeniable. It settled deep inside him, a quiet ache that would call him back, time and again, to the place where wildness and love intertwined. The forest around them seemed to pulse with life, a living tapestry of shadow and light, of whispers and silence. The ancient trees stood like silent sentinels, holding the memory of this night within their gnarled branches, forever part of the story woven between man and dear woman. As the first rays of sunlight spilled through the canopy, painting the earth in gold, the man stood still, caught in the fragile space between what was and what might be. The world resumed its breath, but within him a new rhythm had taken hold, one born of surrender, longing, and a love as wild and eternal as the forest itself.
The first light of dawn filtered softly through the thick canopy of the forest, pale beams casting long shadows that stretched and faded like whispered secrets carried away by the breeze. The world seemed to hold its breath in that fragile moment between night and day. But the dear woman, the wild spirit, the embodiment of mystery, desire, and danger, was no longer there. She had vanished, not with a trace of farewell or a sigh of regret, but as if swallowed by the very earth and air that had borne her. One moment the space between the ancient trees had shimmered with her presence, the faint scent of crushed leaves and moonlit water, the gentle brush of warmth against skin like a sigh. And then, as the sun's first rays touched the forest floor, she slipped beyond reach, melting into shadow and memory. The absence she left behind was not empty, but full, an echo of something vast and unknowable, a silence that screamed louder than any words, a stillness that unsettled the man's soul more profoundly than any noise. The forest, once vibrant and alive, now felt hollow, as if part of its very heart had been torn away and left trembling in his outstretched hands. He stood motionless, breath shallow, the lingering warmth of her touch faint but unmistakable beneath his skin. It was a subtle glow, like embers smoldering beneath cold ashes, hidden yet alive. The wildness she had breathed into him did not vanish with her departure.
It rooted itself deeply within, a permanent mark carved into his flesh and spirit. His eyes roamed the shadows, desperate for a glimpse of her form, a sign of her return, the faintest breath of that elusive magic. But the forest remained silent and indifferent, wrapped in the muted colors of early morning, eternal and unyielding. Inside, the man felt the weight of her absence like a raw wound, aching and alive, a paradox of pain and presence. It was a wound that did not scream for healing, but whispered endlessly, echoing through the chambers of his heart with a bittersweet, haunting melody. He was changed, unraveled, and reshaped by the encounter, perhaps wiser or merely more haunted. The memories of that night clung to him like fragile threads woven from shadow and light, fragments of a dream half remembered, a story told in touches and glances, in breath and silence, a dance between flesh and spirit that refused to fade into the mundane. But the world around him demanded more than memories. Reality resumed its relentless march. The morning chorus of birds pierced the stillness with song. The distant rush of water over stones filled the air. Small creatures stirred in the underbrush. Life continued, as if untouched by the fragile, sacred moment that had passed. The contrast was stark. The wild, suspended magic of that night now folded into the ordinary rhythm of day. Sharp edges of desire dulled by daylight, the raw ache of longing buried beneath routine. The delicate promise of connection, once tangible and electric, now felt like a fragile ember buried beneath ash and time.
He moved through the forest, footsteps soft against moss and leaf litter, breath steady but hollow. The light shifted and flickered, revealing paths both familiar and strange. Yet nothing felt the same. The world itself seemed tilted on an unseen axis, forever changed by the weight of something unseen yet deeply felt. He carried her with him, in the subtle brush of wind that teased his skin, in the lingering scent of pine and damp earth, and in the ache beneath his ribs that pulsed with the memory of her nearness. It was a presence both a blessing and a curse, a gift wrapped in longing. There was no clear lesson to learn, no easy truth to grasp, no morality carved in black and white. The dear woman was neither punishment nor reward, neither curse nor blessing. She was a mystery, a force of nature beyond human understanding, a wildness that defied confinement. The man understood, perhaps too late, that some encounters are not meant to be tamed or fully comprehended. They exist to be lived, to be felt, to be remembered in fragments and shadows, often carrying the weight of longing, of scars invisible but profound. Sometimes, in the quiet hours after her departure, he would close his eyes and feel her presence again, the soft breath of the forest against his cheek, a whisper carried on the wind. In those moments, the boundaries between worlds thinned, and he was once more caught between reality and dream, between human and wild. But the forest kept its secrets close, and the dear woman remained a shadow, a fleeting glimpse, a whispered story, a flame that flickered just beyond reach. She was the question that had no answer, the longing that could not be sated. He was left with the weight of absence, the ache of what might have been, and the fragile hope that some part of her, wild, sacred, untouchable, had embedded itself within his soul, a spark that could neither be extinguished nor fully embraced. Life went on, but nothing was ever quite the same. The world resumed its cadence, yet beneath the surface everything shifted, marked by the imprint of desire, haunted by the echo of the wild. His heart beat with a new rhythm now, one born of surrender and longing, of love and loss entwined. The ache was a constant companion, a reminder of the night when the wild had touched him and he had glimpsed something eternal. The forest around him breathed, ancient and knowing. The trees stood like silent sentinels, holding the memory of that night within their gnarled branches, forever part of the story woven between man and dear woman. And though she was gone, the wildness she embodied lived on, inside him, in the earth beneath his feet, in the whispered songs of wind and leaves, a promise that the line between human and myth is never fixed, that desire and danger walk hand in hand beneath the moonlight. He carried the mystery like a sacred burden, uneasy, intoxicating, and endlessly alive. And in the depths of his soul he knew the story was far from over. The quiet hours after her departure were filled with a strange mixture of clarity and confusion. Each breath felt heavy with memory, each heartbeat a pulse of something both thrilling and terrifying. In the solitude of the forest, he confronted the paradox of her nature, both sanctuary and storm, a muse and a warning. She was a question that demanded no answers, only the courage to feel deeply and live fully within the unknown. He was been touched by the wild, irrecoverably and forever. And in that touch lay both his salvation and his curse.
They say she still dances beneath the silver gaze of the moon, where shadows weave with light like ancient whispers. The dear woman moves, graceful, untamed, eternal. Her footsteps are soft against the earth, barely more than a sigh, but they stir the forest's heart in rhythms as old as time itself. In the stillness of twilight, when the veil between worlds thins and the air trembles with secrets, she appears, not as a ghost, but as a living echo of desire, mystery, and wildness. The forest remembers. It holds her story in every rustling leaf, every bend of the stream, every breath of wind that slips between the towering trees. It carries her laughter in the rustle of branches, the shimmer of stars mirrored in quiet pools. And somewhere, just beyond the edge of sight and sense, she waits. An invitation wrapped in the longing of countless souls who wander too close to the border between the known and the unknown. They say
the story never ends. That every man and woman who walks beneath those ancient boughs carries within them a spark of the dear woman's wildness, a flicker of the flame that dances just out of reach. That those who listen closely may hear her call, the soft murmur woven into the wind, the pulse of a heartbeat that is not quite their own. You too may be part of this tale, for the dear woman is more than myth. She is a force, a presence that moves through the world in endless cycles of yearning and surrender, love and loss. Her dance is never still. It flows through time, touching those who seek her, or those who simply stumble unknowingly into her realm. Perhaps you have already felt her brush, an inexplicable shiver, a fleeting shadow in your peripheral vision, a sudden rush of warmth and fear mingled like dusk and dawn. She lingers in the spaces between reality and dream, a soft ache beneath the surface of everyday life. The forest is her voice, and if you listen, you might hear it too, the whispered truth that some desires are wild and sacred, impossible to cage or fully understand. In this story, there is no clear ending, no neat resolution, no promised happily ever after. Instead, there is the eternal tension between what is lost and what remains, the delicate balance between the light of understanding and the shadow of mystery. The dear woman embodies that balance. She is both sanctuary and storm, comfort and danger, a fleeting touch and a lasting mark. She is the song of the wild heart, the pulse beneath the quiet skin of the world, and in her presence we remember what it means to be alive, raw, vulnerable, aching with longing, and trembling with the possibility of surrender. The human spirit, like the forest itself, is full of shadows and light, strength and fragility, the fierce desire to hold on, and the deep knowing that some things must be let go. The man in the story, marked by his encounter, walks forward changed, carrying her memory like a secret flame that both warms and wounds. But he is not alone. In every whispered breeze, in every crackling leaf, the dear woman's story is retold, reborn in the hearts of those who dare to listen.
The cycle repeats, endless as the turning seasons. Each encounter unique, yet woven into the same timeless thread. A story told in sighs and glances, in moonlight and shadow. The dear woman's dance flows like a river, sometimes calm and inviting, sometimes wild and overwhelming, but always alive. She moves between worlds, the seen and unseen, the sacred and profane, the known and unknowable. And those who cross her path become part of that dance, caught in the delicate tension between fear and desire, between the longing to hold her close and the instinct to let her go. The forest breathes with her presence.
Its ancient trees stand as silent witnesses, their roots entwined with the earth like secrets too old to speak aloud. The wind carries her laughter through the leaves, the distant cry of a wild thing longing to be free. Even the stars seem to shimmer with her essence, casting light that dances across the darkened woods like a promise. And in the stillness of night, when the world is hushed and every shadow deepens, the dear woman's song rises, a haunting melody that calls to those who listen, inviting them to step beyond the boundaries of their ordinary lives and into the wild unknown. This is the true magic of myth, to open a door to a world where reality blurs, where the heart's deepest desires and fears intertwine, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary through the lens of longing. The dear woman reminds us that beneath the surface of our everyday lives lies a wildness waiting to be embraced, a sacred fire that burns quietly but persistently. She is a mirror to our own souls, reflecting the parts of ourselves we often keep hidden, the yearning for connection, the fear of loss, the thrill of danger, and the ache of desire. Through her we glimpse the complexity of human emotion, the simultaneous pull of love and fear, hope and despair, surrender and control. And so the story lingers, a soft murmur carried on the wind. It asks us to remember that some encounters leave marks not visible to the eye, but etched deeply into the heart. That the dance between human and myth is ongoing, eternal, and essential. It invites us to embrace the wildness within, to acknowledge the beauty and pain of longing, and to find courage in vulnerability. They say she still dances, beneath the watchful moon, beyond the edge of sight, within the heartbeat of the forest. She moves through time and space like a living poem, an eternal dance of shadows and light, desire and loss, fear and surrender. And perhaps as you listen to this story, you feel her presence too. A soft touch on your skin, a flicker of movement just beyond your gaze, a whisper carried in the night air. The dear woman is not just a tale from long ago, she is a living part of the world around us and within us. A reminder that the wild, the sacred, and the mysterious are never truly gone. They say the story will come to you again, in dreams, or moments when the world feels both strange and familiar. When you are caught between reality and fantasy, when desire stirs and the night deepens, listen closely. You may hear her dance, the endless haunting rhythm of the dear woman who moves forever in the spaces where longing and myth intertwine. And in that moment you become part of the story. A story without end, without clear beginning, woven into the fabric of time and memory. A story of wild hearts and tender souls, of shadows that hold light, and light that breathes shadow. They say she still dances, and in that dance lies the secret we all seek. The truth that some parts of us will always roam free, wild and unbound, in search of something greater than ourselves. So listen. Listen to the forest's breath, the rustle of leaves, the soft thrum of the earth beneath your feet. Feel the pulse of the unseen, the tug of the unknown, and know that the dear woman's dance is never far, always near, always calling, always waving to lead you into the wild. The story is yours now, a story of longing and loss, of desire and surrender, of a wildness that cannot be tamed. And as long as the moon rises and the forest breathes, her dance will never end.